Hello, everybody. This is Jess from the Keto Fit, and today we're going to be talking about reintroducing carbs in a healthy way on keto. And I'm going to be having a very special guest join us here in just a minute, and that is Evy I, and she is from The Healthy Parent, and I'm pulling her in right now. She should be on in just a second here. And Evy is another keto coach. Hey, Evy, thanks so much for joining us today. I was just introducing you and letting everybody know that we're going to be talking about how to reintroduce carbs on keto, and that you are a fellow keto coach and you're over in Belgium, right?
Yes, that's right.
And first of all, it is 9 o'clock there right now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's night right now. It's almost my bedtime, so but I can still squeeze a live in. So I'm very happy
so
to be
grateful.
here.
Yes, just so grateful that you made the time to talk late at night. You've got your little one down, and now you're just here with us, making the time to chat with us today. So I'm really, really grateful to have you. But I was just getting ready to tell everybody a little bit about you, but then I would love to have you introduce yourself as well. But I want to just, praise on you for a couple of minutes here, because I love following Evy's content. And if you guys are not following her yet, she's the.healthy.parent. And she recently did a little bit of a rebrand, which we're going to talk about. But you used to be It's the Keto Babe. And so I found her through the keto community. And Evy is awesome at posting great content. She does beautiful food shots of recipes. It's mouthwatering, and I love to share her stuff. She's also really into research, and she's always experimenting on herself. And I love that, because I'm always experimenting on myself as well. And a lot of times she doesn't experiment and I'm like, whoa, you ate that and this is what happened. And then I go try it and I feel a little bit better about it. I let you do it first, and then I'm like, okay, I'll try it too. So yeah, and the thing that I love the most about you, Evy, and we'll talk about this, is just that you are willing to change your mind. And I think a lot of people nowadays are not willing to change their mind. And it's such an important quality. Not that we change our values, but that we're open to changing our mind about certain things in light of new evidence. And you're always seeking out new information and new evidence. And one of the things that you changed your mind a little bit about is carbs. So we're going to be talking about that today. But will you tell us about yourself? How did you first come to eating low carb?
So first of all, thank you for striking my ego so much. But yes, I started out as the keto babe, and then I started reintroducing some carbs after I did some experiments. I'm also a keto coach, so for me it was kind of hard to admit that carbs are not as bad as you would think they are. But yeah, for me it's been a big change. Since I started out on the ketogenic diet, I think it was around 3 or 4 years ago. And then I just followed all the rules. I started eating very high fat, so I would mainly eat bacon and eggs, and then a bunch of cheese, and I did eat some vegetables. But I was mainly following the Dr. Berg method, and that was working out really well for me. I lost a lot of weight. I also didn't go into keto full on. I started reducing the carbs, and then after being able to living without bread, I started to be full on keto. But then the last couple of months, we went to Spain, and there I started a little bit experimenting with some foods that they were having there that I didn't have at home, because sometimes I didn't have the availability of eating keto, and so I would have some orange juice, and that's where the whole orange juice obsession started, because lately I'm having half a glass of orange juice in the morning. But before that I was also experimenting with some other carbs, like the red lentil pasta and some other things. So yeah, that's lately what I've been doing and changing into my ketogenic lifestyle.
Yeah. So even though you have made some adjustments to keto, you mentioned that before, you were quote unquote following all the rules and subscribing to, a certain method, which is people are very focused on, like, make sure you're getting 75% of your calories from fat and, you know, these specific things, the keto rules, right? So tell us, you know, how did that work out for you in your benefit? And then also, as time went on, you know, things can change because we're constantly growing, we're constantly evolving. Your body has changed, your hormones have changed. So what changed that maybe you felt like that was actually hindering you, or you weren't feeling your best?
Yeah, so in the beginning, I mainly counted carbs. So I would stick to like 25 or 30 grams of carbs in a whole day. And then I just counted that into my calories. And then like the fats and the proteins, they were kind of like automatically evened out.
Yeah.
But then I noticed like I was eating a lot of fat and I got bloated. So then I had to adjust that, or I was eating like a certain vegetables and I got bloated again. And then I had to make adjustments. I had all the problems that you could get on keto, like constipation, the bloating. So I had to make adjustments every time because I started feeling my body. It was like adapting to this new lifestyle. But I was losing weight, but I just had some things that I needed to deal with. So yeah, that's mainly what I did. And then I started introducing more carbs because I was starting to have period problems. It was like a couple of months ago. I was really deep into fasting too. That I would do like a 48-hour fast or a 36-hour fast, like really hard fasting. And then I did my research and I realized that women's bodies are very sensitive. Like my husband can do like full on hard keto. He can fast however long he wants and he doesn't have any bad effects on him. But for me, for like women, we're very sensitive. If we go into calorie deficit like for too long, we can start having like period problems or hormones get unbalanced. You can have like your thyroid hormone that is unbalanced. And so I started dealing with that. I quit fasting a little bit more. I just stick to like 2 meals a day or like 3 meals a day. So I didn't go like hardcore fasting anymore.
Yeah.
And then I also introduced the carbs, and that changed the game for me because I felt different. It's hard to explain, but when I started introducing the orange juice, I don't know, it's the vitamin C or just the extra fiber that I got, but that was like magic for me. I started it in Spain with half a glass, and then when I came back, I just kept on doing it. And I checked constantly with my blood sugar and my ketones, and to my surprise, most of the time I'm still in ketosis. Like even when I eat certain food that I think, yeah, this is gonna knock me out of ketosis for sure.
Yeah.
I measure and I'm surprised that I'm still in ketosis and my blood sugar is stable. So for me, mainly it was checking my blood sugar and my ketones and experimenting in that way.
Yeah, yeah. And that is so interesting. And I love what she's talking about because I see that what she's posting on her stories about what she ate. And then I'm like, what? Like, how is she still in ketosis? You know, because it breaks the keto rules, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what I think is so important is that you are really taking the time to see what works best for you. And I posted a reel this morning on my page about how you don't need to follow the right diet. You need to create the diet that's right for you. People tend to get very like religious or like dogmatic about following the rules of a certain diet. But really what it's all about is that you're supposed to be practicing self-care through what you eat. And so it's so important to do what works best for you. And I'm hearing you say that keto worked great for you until it didn't. Like until you realize that, oh, something's wrong here. I shouldn't be having period problems. So for anybody that's listening in, like, what are some signs if people have been eating keto? What are some signs, or maybe even just like experiences that they might be having, like, oh, I miss certain foods. Like, how can you know if this is right for you versus are there some people who it might not be right for?
I think keto is a great way to start because a lot of people are insulin resistant, and that is due to not only having a high amount of carbs, but also like the processed foods. We tend to blame the carbs and we take all the carbs as the same. Like the carbs from fruits are not the same like the carbs that you're gonna get from grains and other derivatives. So I don't think carbs are the devil. And also we like to send like we hear that carbs are bad, so we cannot eat any carbs. It's not in that way. Carbs, if you eat too many of them, it's going to have a negative effect on your body because it's going to raise your blood sugar. But we need to find that balance in finding, okay, I can have some carbs and I can check for myself how many can I have. And the way that I like to do it is to check my blood sugar and see if my blood sugar is stable. Then I know the carbs that I'm having from that food is good for me. It's a lot of trial and error. It's not looking into the ketogenic diet and say like, these are the rules, and then you start into the ketogenic diet and then all of a sudden you feel like deprived from certain foods that you really wanted, and you're like punishing yourself from, no, I cannot have them. But in small amounts, certain carbs, you can totally have them. And when the majority of your food is from whole foods, I personally don't believe that that is a bad thing to do. I think it's worse to have like a low calorie, low carb diet that is mainly consistent of processed foods. That is going to have a negative effect on your body. And then you can even like eat low carb and have period problems, but then it's not even a problem coming from the low carb diet, but morely from the processed ingredients that are in the food.
Yeah. So basically, I'm hearing you say that it's the quality of the food that matters more than like the macronutrient breakdown of the food. And so we're talking about reintroducing carbs on keto in a healthy way. So for anybody that's tuning in, Evie is not eating a sleeve of Oreos. Evie is avoiding gluten still. So, you know, if people are wondering how to reintroduce carbs in a healthy way, what I'm hearing you say is stick to whole foods.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Watch your portion sizes and test to see if how is your glucose responding and how are your ketones responding, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because I can have some more carbs than my husband. If we like to check like with the keto mojo meter, we have it on hand here. We have a bunch of strips, and when we do like testing, we eat the same meal and then we test separately. And sometimes I'm still in ketosis and he's bumped out, or I have like stable blood sugar and he has like a skyrocketing blood sugar. So it's different for everyone. Also, our gut bacteria have an influence on our weight and how we look and how we process our foods. But I would say mainly stick to whole foods and afterwards test with the test strip, because when you have it black and white on a machine, you know exactly how you're doing. So you can eat like a certain food. I always recommend whole foods, cooking yourself, making your own dishes. And then 2 hours later, you just check, or an hour later, you check your blood glucose and see how you're doing. And if that one is skyrocketing, check mainly the portion. Maybe you ate too much of it, or that food is just not good for you. It skyrockets your blood sugar, and it's better to avoid it. Or if you can have it in small portions, it's okay.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So for somebody who's never done this before, and by the way, I ate keto. It's been 8 years now, but I only just started testing my blood sugar within the last year. And so
Yeah.
I just followed all the rules and trusted, you know, my body was responding the way hopefully it was supposed to respond. I never actually tested anything. And so you were one of the people that inspired me to start testing this stuff. And I was like, this is so curious. I'm going to do this too. So for somebody that's watching right now that's like, I have no idea where to begin. So you mentioned a specific device that you like to use. How can people get access to this? How do they know what numbers are normal versus abnormal? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I use the Keto Mojo Meter. This one is a device that you can just buy online. And it comes with two testing strips. So one is for glucose and one is for ketones. And you can also connect it to your phone. So you can have all the data over there if you want to check how you're doing during the day. So you have one strip that is for glucose, and your glucose 1 hour or like 2 hours after a meal, that one should be between 70 to 100 milligrams per deciliter. If it's over, a little bit over is fine. Like the optimal ranges are 70 to 100. But if it's not over 130 milligrams per deciliter, that's totally fine. So that means that your body is well adapting to the food that you're eating. Your insulin response is good. You don't have a spike. And then when you check your ketones, is to check if you're in ketosis, if you're actually using fat for fuel or if you're using glucose for fuel. Your body can also use both, but this is a great device to check if you're in ketosis. And then your ketone levels, for nutritional ketosis, you start at 0.5 millimole per liters. And then you know you're in nutritional ketosis. You can increase your ketones by eating a little bit more fat, for example, or when you're fasting, you get into ketosis a lot faster too.
Okay. So, for people who maybe their blood sugar is going above 130 when they're consuming certain foods, does that mean that they should avoid those foods or adjust the portions, or like what should they do if they see that?
It kind of depends on where the person is in their journey. If they're already like insulin resistant and they're just starting out on keto and your body is still recovering or healing from the highly processed diet that you had before, it could be that your glucose levels are a little bit higher than the optimal ranges. But then it's just like stick to it and go forward, and you're gonna see that slowly you're gonna get into like lower levels, and then you're also going to bump into ketosis, because normally when you are getting into ketosis, it means that your blood sugar is already stable. So if you have high blood sugar, if it's over 130, chances are high that you're not in ketosis anymore. It bumps you out, so they are kind of evened out.
Yeah. Okay, great. So for the average person who's watching this right now and they're listening to you, they're like, what is insulin resistance? How do I know if I have it? What does that mean? Could you give us a little primer?
Yeah, sure. I always like talk about things and I don't realize that some people never heard about it before. But insulin resistance is mainly when you live on a high processed food diet that is also high in carbs, coming from grain, corn, high fructose corn syrup, and all the ingredients that raise your blood sugar for a very long time. All of a sudden, every time when you eat glucose, like you eat carbs, those are becoming glucose inside your body, and then your pancreas is producing insulin to put the glucose into your cells to then produce energy. But at a certain point, there's going to be too much insulin that is produced because of the high amount of carbs that needs to be put into the cells. And then your cells kind of close them off and there's insulin resistance. So your body cannot use the insulin in an optimal way anymore. And then your blood sugar is going higher and higher, and it's hard for you to have like a stable blood sugar. And sometimes people like 10, 20 years later, they start having diabetes type 2. So that is a consequence of being insulin resistant. And I think in the US, I think it's about 80% or 70% of the people are already insulin resistant. So insulin resistance is actually being pre-diabetic.
Right.
So if you're in that condition, the chances are high that at a later stage in life, you can become type 2 diabetic.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So just as a recap, just to make sure that I'm understanding and explaining well for everybody else. So when we eat high carb foods, so like breads, rice, pasta, potato chips, processed foods, Taco Bell, all of these things.
Yeah.
So what happens is our body starts to metabolize that and it sends glucose into our cells. But if our glucose levels get too high, it can be very dangerous. And so we have this hormone called insulin, and its job is to usher the blood sugar out of our cells, and it actually stores it as fat when we have an abundance of our glucose in our cells, right? So if we're constantly having our insulin be so high, and this is very, very common on a standard American diet, our body develops an intolerance or a resistance to insulin, and now it's no longer able to do its job effectively. So what are some of the symptoms? I know you mentioned, and basically if we don't deal with insulin resistance, it's a precursor to type 2 diabetes. And most Americans actually do have insulin resistance because of the way that we eat, and we might not know it. So what are some ways that we can actually know whether we're insulin resistant or not?
Well, I would say check your blood sugar. If in the morning, if it's higher than 130, chances are high that you're already insulin resistant, because in the morning your blood sugar should be stable because you haven't eaten any food, hopefully during the night when you were sleeping. So that would be stabilized. If you have high blood sugars in the morning, chances are high that you're insulin resistant. Also, when you have excess weight, there's also big chance that you're insulin resistant. So those are the big two markers of insulin resistance. And then also when you go to your doctor and you get a blood test done, they do like an A1C, and then that's like the amount of sugar that was in your body, so to say, for the past 3 months. And if that one is high, they can also diagnose you with insulin resistance.
Yeah, yeah. So I know A1C might be something that people are a little bit more familiar with. It's just a common blood test that gets run by your
Yeah.
doctor. But it actually is possible that you might have a normal A1C level because it's an average of the last 3 months, but it's not taking into account how your body actually responds to certain foods. And so to actually have a blood glucose meter can be very empowering for you to be able to make specific decisions about what foods are working for you and what foods are not working for you. Sometimes it's not enough to just look at your A1C and be like, oh, I'm fine. I don't need to change anything about the way that I eat. If you're curious, so you bought yours online, right? Where did you buy it?
I got it from the Keto Mojo website. You go to ketomojo.com and you find all the information there about the meter, how you need to use it. So you can also get like a recap. It's not like you're going to use this device and it's like, I don't know what I'm doing. You get all the information that you need to know what your blood glucose ranges should be and how many, from which point you get into ketosis. So that is one that you can use. I like this one because it tells you if you're in ketosis or not. You can also use like the peeing sticks, but if you're in keto for like a long time, after a certain amount of time, you don't have any more results with the peeing sticks.
Yeah.
So I really like the blood test glucose meter. And if you don't like to pinch your finger like every time you had a meal, you can also get like a continuous glucose monitor, which you can just pinch inside your arm, and you connect it with your phone, and then you can just see throughout the whole day, 24 hours, 7 days a week for 2 weeks, how your blood sugar is. So that's really easy. I tried it before too, and it's really convenient because you just eat something and you don't have to think about I forgot 1 hour later or 2 hours later, I forgot to pinch to check my blood sugar. You can just get your phone and you have all the results right there.
Yeah.
So I recommend it highly to people that just start out on keto, just to see which food am I eating and what is it doing with my blood glucose. And I also recommend it to the people that I see in my husband's office. He's a chiropractor. We have a chiropractic practice. And when he sees people having problems, he refers them to me if he knows it's a metabolic problem, so I can give them a bit of information. And a lot of people just don't believe that I'm eating bread, I'm eating pasta. How is that gonna affect my health, or how is that gonna affect my blood sugar, or I'm not gonna be diabetic in so many years, what you're saying. So then I advise them, like, go and check your blood sugar, get this monitor. And I guarantee you, like 1 week later, people come to me and like, you were so right. Like every time when I eat like bread, pasta, pizza, I see my blood sugar, and it's like, I see people that are in the 200s sometimes that are like, you need to see a doctor because these are not like good ranges, or you need to adjust your diet.
Yeah, yeah. So getting a blood glucose meter, or sometimes called a blood glucometer, is a great way to empower yourself and to take your health into your own hands a little bit. And so Evie mentioned two different devices. She uses the Keto Mojo, which is a blood glucose meter where you actually have to prick your finger to get the results. I bought mine on Amazon. So if anybody's interested, you can look up Keto Mojo on Amazon as well. And then also you mentioned a continuous glucose monitor. So this actually just plugs into the back of your arm right here, and you leave
Yeah.
it on 24/7 for 2 weeks. You can you can go longer than that. You just have to get another device if you want to keep measuring. And
Yeah.
it could be interesting to do this too for a full month to see how it varies at different times of your menstrual cycle. So what's a brand that you've used for the CGM?
I use the Freestyle Libre. That's the one that I got here in Europe. I know that in the US you have a brand called Levels.
Mm-hmm.
That's also one that you can use, and then you just pinch it into your arm and connect it with your phone, and it's so easy to use.
Yeah,
And it
yeah.
doesn't hurt.
Right. It doesn't hurt. I haven't used a CGM yet, but I would like to. I'm planning to. So Levels is one brand. I know there's another good brand out there called Sensio. So if people are wondering, well, how much is this going to cost me? I'll speak from my perspective. I ordered a Keto Mojo, and I believe it costs about $150 on Amazon. And it comes with an initial pack of strips. I think it's 10 strips for glucose and 10 strips for ketones. And then to get like a 50 pack refill for each, 50 glucose and 50 ketones, I think I paid another $60 to get a refill. So it's not something that you need to test every single day. It's more just running experiments on yourself for how different foods affect you. And really, like Evie was saying, the best time to test is you can test your fasting in the morning. And again, you want to make sure that you're around 70, you said, between 70 and 100 fasted. Yep. And then 2 hours after you consume a certain food. So this is called postprandial in the medical world. And so, and you want to make sure that you're under 130 ideally, but more ideal is 70 to 100. Even though you just ate some food, you still want to see level, stable blood sugar.
Yeah.
So the continuous glucose monitor, I did some research, and I think it's about $250 for a 2-week thing. And that's what I found. I don't know about what you found.
I paid 80 euros, which is like around 70 something dollars. So
wow. Okay.
That was
do
it's
your
a big
research,
difference.
people. Now, when I researched this, it was almost a year ago. So I bet you that things are changing too as this is becoming more popular. Over the summer, I was at a water park and I saw 2 different ladies with a CGM on the back of their arm, and I wanted to like run up to them and be like, "Oh, are you doing experiments on yourself?" But yeah, so this is a good way to take to actually find out what's working best for you, because as Evie's saying, you know, she recommends for clients to get this as early on in their journey as possible. If somebody's just starting out with keto, you don't have to do this right from the beginning. You can just stick to, you know, basic low carb foods like animal protein. If you're going to include dairy and you don't have any intolerances, full fat dairy, and stick with low carb vegetables. And you're going to see great results with that. But since we're talking about reintroducing carbs in a healthy way, the biggest thing that we're saying here is your results might vary based on who you are. And so it's really important to get personalized information for yourself. So the question that I was trying to hit on was, are there any people who should not do this? And you mentioned one group specifically, which is people who are insulin resistant. Is there anybody else that you would recommend avoids this? What about people who have a history with eating disorders or food or sugar addiction, things like that?
I think keto is a great baseline. If people want to lose weight, you need to start at keto. Just follow the rules so you get a hang of keto, so you understand, okay, this is like a high carb food, this is a low carb food, stick to whole foods. If you're just starting out, I don't recommend starting with already eating like the starchy vegetables and the fruits, because you're trying to get into ketosis and your body is probably not adapted to optimized carb processing. Like for me, I'm insulin resistant after I've been on the ketogenic diet for so long. So insulin sensitive means that you can easily switch fuel sources. Either your body is gonna run on glucose when you have a lot of glucose and you're active, and then when the glucose is depleted, you start to go in ketosis and you start to produce ketones. So I would say start with a baseline keto. Don't introduce the carbs just yet. Get the hang of ketosis, and then when you feel like I'm getting the hang of this, I have a healthy relationship with this, I do feel like I want to introduce some carbs. I think it's some intuition that I had, like this is something that you need to figure out for yourself. Then you can introduce the carbs. But I know people like you, for example, you love keto and you feel great with keto. You don't have any problems. Like if you don't have the need to introduce carbs and you're doing great on one diet, why should you change it? For me, I did great on keto, but I felt like I had that need to introduce some more of the fruits. So I did, and sometimes I'm doing great. Other times I need to avoid a certain food. I'm still experimenting, but for now I know which foods are good for me according to my blood results. So once I get the hang of that, I know, okay, this food is good for me. I don't need to do the blood test anymore, maybe once in a while.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay, so Evie's basically saying, strongly encouraging that if you're just starting out on keto, that you really need to take some time to just eat a ketogenic diet and let your body adapt to this. So there's a term that we use, it's called keto adapted. And what this means is that your body actually adapts to successfully burning a different fuel source than what it's used to. So especially if you've been eating a standard American diet, a high carb diet, highly processed foods, you are used to using glucose or sugar as your primary fuel source. And so your body is capable of burning two different fuel sources, glucose, or in the absence of carbohydrates, or when we restrict carbohydrates, it will run on fat for fuel. The byproduct of breaking down fat is ketones. That's why it's called a ketogenic diet. So ketones are a secondary fuel source for your body, and it's the backup fuel source. So over time, it takes a little bit of an adjustment period. That's why people get what's called the keto flu symptoms. It takes about 3 days for your body to switch over from burning glucose to actually burning ketones for fuel. But then even beyond that initial 3 to 5 day adjustment period, it can take several weeks for people to become what's called fat adapted. We have a question coming in here, so I'm gonna read this here. Telicity Keto. I always tell my customers new to keto to set a goal of 30 to 35 net carbs and reduce as your body gets adjusted so you don't get keto sickness as your body adjusts to the burn change. Yeah, so thank you, Telicity Keto. You're referencing the keto flu, which is what we're talking about here as we're transitioning over. But even above and beyond that initial keto flu, it can take several weeks for your body to become fat adapted, maybe several months for some people. And so what Evie is saying is that if she tried to introduce high carb foods in the beginning, she might have not been able to do this. It might have spiked her blood glucose way out of control because she was still insulin resistant. So Evie really took the time to heal her body and to become adapted to running on both fuel sources. We call this metabolic flexibility. And so when we're saying maybe who should not try to introduce carbs right now, if you're insulin resistant or if you're not fat adapted. So really take that time, at least a few weeks to a few months, depending upon your situation, how insulin resistant you are, how much weight you actually have to lose. If you have a significant amount of weight to lose, reintroducing carbs right now is probably not going to be the best thing for you. But as you've been on it for a while, or if you're just starting to get that itch of like, I miss certain foods, then, let's try to bring those things back in, but make sure that you're testing to see how your body's responding.
I do think it's a good comment because I've seen some people that when they go into like a 35 of grams of net carbs, it's still low. You can get into ketosis, and sometimes it's like a smaller adaptation. And sometimes when you like really lower the carbs, and sometimes when people go on a high carb diet and then all of a sudden they go carnivore, for example, it's like a really extreme like low. So you're gonna have like higher effect. But I do understand that comment because when I started learning about carbs, I started decreasing it little by little, and then I started to going like into ketosis. So I didn't have too much of the keto flu because I didn't have that big transition. But it's also depending from person to person. Some people they get a keto flu really easy. Other people they don't feel anything about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So for some people, they do like to taper down, like Evie tapered down. So she started just by eliminating certain food groups and lowering and lowering and lowering her carbs. I was a person who just went cold turkey.
Yeah.
Just instantly one day I was like, okay, I'm doing this thing. And then, yeah, I got the keto flu symptoms hard. I started this in 2013. I didn't know what keto flu was. I was just trying to do Atkins. So I didn't know what was happening. I felt awful. And finally, my body got through it on its own. But now I try to tell my clients ahead of time, like, this is something to expect. This is how you can resolve it, mainly through electrolytes, people. It's an electrolyte imbalance is the reason why you're experiencing it. So make sure that you're getting enough sodium, magnesium, and potassium. You can DM Evie or me. We can recommend you some great brands or just give you like a little at-home recipe that you can make as well if you need to supplement with electrolytes. So, okay, so I'm thinking, I just want to share from my perspective because I've been doing some experiments as well. And, my blood sugar sometimes has gone to 140 on trying certain things. Or I'll just realize that I ate too much of a certain thing. So for example, Evie was recommending this red lentil pasta.
Yeah.
And so I tried this. And so I wanted to see what would happen when I was doing this. So I started out very low, like with a fourth cup, and I was fine. And then I tried to bump up, bump up, bump up. And then I realized that if I go above one cup of it, my blood sugar just goes crazy. So
Yeah.
one day I ate about a cup and a half of it, and my blood sugar went up to 140, and it really freaked me out a little bit. Not because I feel like something bad's going to happen to me, but I felt symptoms. Like I felt a little bit shaky. I felt a
Yeah.
lot of cravings afterwards. I felt a slump. And I've tried this with some fruits and things like that. So certain things are working for Evie that are not working for me. And
Yeah.
also, you just have to see how you feel. I really actually don't really love how I feel when I deviate out of ketosis. So Edie's is still staying in ketosis, but sometimes you have deviated out of ketosis. And do you notice a big difference in how you feel?
Yeah. When I eat grains, when I eat bread, when I eat pasta or pizza, like the lentil pasta is not really pasta. It doesn't have grains in it.
Right.
It's made from pure lentils. I usually have like half a cup and I'm okay. If I eat too much, if I eat like more than a cup, I have higher blood sugar too because it's a high carb food and sometimes it's the dose that makes the poison.
Yeah.
But for me, mainly when I eat bread, like 1 hour later, I get like really sleepy. I get the brain fog, and so whenever I eat something with grains, I know my body doesn't like it. I also sometimes get nauseous. Um, my husband is really sensitive to this too, and we go out to have like some fast food or not fast food, or we just go to like a restaurant where it's not like 100% clean food like we usually eat. He gets sick and we just throw up at night. It's just a party at the toilet at night. So yeah, certain things we just cannot do that our body it doesn't like it. So your body's gonna tell you if you're doing good or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, even if you're not actually having like an intolerance to a certain food or throwing up, pay attention to how you feel afterwards, because for me, it's like a very buzzy feeling, almost like, because I used to struggle with legitimate like sugar addiction. Before I started eating keto, my reality every night was that I would make a high carb dinner, and then I'd be watching TV with my husband, and it would not feel optional. It felt like a compulsion in my brain to get up and go get sugar or go get something salty, now something sweet, something salty, something sweet. And I would eat to the point of feeling bloated and distended and awful. And then I would vow, I'm not going to do this again. Today's the last day. I'm starting fresh tomorrow. And then I would restrict the whole day because I was trying to like make up for it or compensate. And then I would binge again the next night. So I'm just making space for some people. If you feel like you have had a legitimate sugar addiction and then you start to feel, I call it buzzy. It feels like I lose my control a little bit around cravings, and I don't like the way that that feels. And so
Yeah.
I like to try to avoid that feeling. I feel safer. I feel more in control of my thoughts, and just a better relationship with food when I don't get myself into that buzzy place where I feel like, oh my God, I want something else now. And then trying to talk myself through, don't do it, don't do it. Like I don't like that feeling. And so some people might feel that and some people might not. And so that can be an act of self-care too, is even if you're not actually having a negative blood sugar response, or even if it's not kicking you out of ketosis, but if it's affecting your thoughts and you're getting that feeling of loss of control, maybe this isn't for you either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just checking what am I eating? Do I feel like I need to eat more or am I satisfied? Because sometimes people eat a certain keto product that is low carb, but then after one or two bites, it's like, oh no, I need some more. I need some chocolates, for example. Like if you cannot control yourself and if you don't feel satisfied after a certain amount, it could be better to even avoid that food and replace it with something else. Because the processed foods, for me, it was a big difference. If I went to Whole Foods, I was also the person at night that I would go into the fridge and check 10 times what can I eat now to curb the cravings, because I was always like craving something and I could never find what it was. I was eating chocolate, chips, all of the processed foods, and it didn't like take away that craving. But then when I started eating whole foods, that one went away. So sometimes it's just checking like, am I eating too many processed foods too?
Yeah. Yeah. Can you give us any tips on like the actual how to do this? So let's say that we've identified that, a sweet potato doesn't really spike my blood sugar too much. This is a safe food for me after I've done some experimentation. Like, is there a certain order in which I should be eating the foods on my plate? Should I save carbs for a certain time of day? Like any concrete tips that you can give us?
I always recommend to eat the protein last and the vegetables first, because the protein, it turns off the hunger hormones.
Mm-hmm.
And when you eat your protein first and you still want to get your vegetables in to get your vitamins, minerals, and your extra vitamins, it's gonna be hard, because I used to like eat my meats first because that's what I love to eat, and then I was like, let me just leave these vegetables, and then I missed out on like the good vitamins and fiber. So I would always recommend like eat your vegetables first, like a salad, and then have your carb, or like a cooked vegetable. I like to eat on the side like some cauliflower rice or some steamed vegetables, and then I would also have the meat
Yeah.
last. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So eat the carbs first if you're going to be doing that, right? Because um, you want to end with your protein because that's what's going to send the signals to your brain that you're actually satisfied. And so the reason why we keep eating is because we don't have that signal going to our brains that I feel satisfied. Instead, you feel like I want something more.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. When you're eating steak, your brain tells you when you're full. Like you don't feel like, oh, I just want another bite of steak. Like it literally just feels like, okay, I'm done now. But definitely with like even low carb vegetables, like sometimes bacon Brussels sprouts or something, you feel like I could eat another serving of that, and you want to
Yeah.
keep piling it on. But if you save the protein for last, so that's a really great tip. Also, I've heard no naked carbs. Can you explain to us what that means?
Naked carbs, as in.
So, meaning like don't eat carbs just by themselves. You always want to pair it with a fat. Do you recommend
uh,
that?
yeah, I always recommend to have like the full spectrum, like some carbs, some protein, and some fat, because they kind of work together. Um, and your protein, if you eat too much protein, I would also recommend not to eating too much protein, because that one can also be turned into glucose. So if you're struggling with that, just eat like a moderate amount of protein. I don't know what's going on with my voice,
No, it's okay.
but
It's 9 o'clock at night.
yeah, it's tired. But yeah, always combine a good source of protein with some healthy fats. The fats are also really important. Like stick to avocado oil, extra virgin oil, some ghee, some real butter, some duck fat, some bison fat. It's also good. And stay away from the vegetable oils, because those are inflammatory. And when your body is inflamed, you're in a state of stress. And it's gonna be really hard to lose weight too, because when your body is in a stress state, it doesn't want to let go of the fat, because it needs the stored fat to fight the inflammation.
Yeah, definitely. That's a big reason why a lot of people that are on keto are experiencing stalls because they're not losing weight because your body is still inflamed because of the types of keto foods that you are eating. So even though these fats like soybean oil or canola oil, vegetable oil, things like that are zero carbs, they're highly inflammatory. And so your body is not going to allow itself to release that weight and heal your hormones as long as your body is inflamed. So it's not just about the macronutrient breakdown. So it's not just about eating low carb, it's actually the quality of the foods too. Same thing can be true with a lot of these highly processed keto products. They can be very inflammatory with the ingredients. One of the first things that I work on with clients is coffee. So many people are drinking these sugar-free creamers like Coffee Mate, International Delight. These things are so inflammatory. Never mind the fact that the carbs can add up, because I don't know about you, but I used to do a heavy pour of that stuff, and like 2 tablespoons is like 2 carbs. So that can add up for the carbs, but also this just the funky ingredients are keeping you inflamed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like the syrups that they put in Starbucks, they're sugar free, but it comes with a lot of like 30 something other ingredients and flavors that your body, it just doesn't like it. It's a foreign invader kind of, and your body is gonna produce inflammation to fight that ingredient, because it's not natural. It's something chemical that your body doesn't like. And it's better to just, when you want to have like some sweetness in your coffee, put in some stevia or some monk fruit or some erythritol, If you want to introduce some carbs, you can put in some coconut sugar or some maple syrup or some honey. But if you're going to introduce the carbs, always check your blood sugar after.
Yes, definitely. And so, you know, with Evie drinking her orange juice in the morning, you guys, she is also consuming bacon and eggs with that. So
Yeah.
she's getting her protein and she's getting her fat at the same time that she's bringing in the carbs. So that's probably greatly buffering her blood sugar response.
Yeah, exactly. If I would eat only just the orange juice, I should like test it to see how it's going. Maybe I'm gonna do that tomorrow. Just drink like half a glass of orange juice and then
Yeah.
check 2 hours later how it's going. But yeah, if I have like a carb, it's always paired with protein. I don't have carbs just like one piece of fruit and that's it. No, I always combine it in a full meal.
Yeah, that's the saying in the keto space is no naked carbs. That's what it means. Don't eat carbs just by themselves. You kind of like put clothing on the carbs, like by
Yeah.
buffering the response, you clothe it with some fat and some protein.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to ask you about your rebrand to becoming the healthy parent instead of just it's the keto babe. So you're still a keto coach, but what's your focus on more now?
I'm still a keto coach. I still help people, mainly in the chiropractic practice right now. It's easy. My husband refers them to me, and I get to help them, and I receive great results together with chiropractic in a holistic way. And on my social media, I started rebranding to the healthy parent, because I was introducing more carbs and I got a lot of people DMing me like, what's going on? This is not keto. What are you doing? This is not the keto rules. I'm so confused. So I started thinking like, why am I calling this like the keto babe while I'm still eating like carbs? And it's not according to the keto rules. And then I was thinking a little bit further and it's like, why am I on this diet even? And it was like mainly about health. Like in these times, health is really precious. So it's something that is really important to me. And I mainly started my journey when I became a mom, when I became pregnant. Then I said like, okay, this is a time for me to be healthy, to have a healthy child, because I was now responsible for another life. And that really hit me. So then I started my health journey and it hasn't stopped ever since. So that's why I'm now the healthy parent. And I also advise moms with busy lifestyles on how to still be healthy. And I also started up a blog where I share my recipes, where I also will be sharing some mom life compared with a healthy lifestyle, because there's a lot of pressure on women, especially working moms or stay-at-home moms. Like being a mom, you know, it's a full-time job, and when you're also going to work, when you come home, it never ends. And then to still be healthy or stick to a certain diet, sometimes it can be really hard because you're just tired and you don't feel like cooking, and you just want to grab a bag of chips and just have a quick dinner and just lay on the couch exhausted. So I'm going to share more about that on how to have some easy recipes if you want to have like a family meal, how you can make some other recipes. And it's combined with paleo, which is like the Paleolithic diet, which is based on the diet that we supposedly had as humans so many years ago when we were still cavemen. So it doesn't include any dairy. It also doesn't include any grains. It does include everything keto except for the dairy and some fruits and some starchy vegetables, but also mainly no sugar. But I do add in some coconut sugar or like honey, that's also allowed. So I'm calling this like kind of the keto diet. It's a combination of keto and paleo, where I still eat some paleo allowed foods compared with like low carb keto diet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of overlap between keto and paleo, and that can be a question that people tend to ask because it can be confusing. And all of that kind of falls underneath the umbrella of what we would call ancestral eating.
Yeah.
So the way our ancestors ate. So this could be keto, paleo, primal. So there's a lot of different words for it. But the keto, it's interesting because there's like a quote unquote keto diet that now exists in mainstream culture. But what's important is that keto is not a diet, it's a metabolic state. So ketosis is a metabolic state. And even though Evie is no longer following all the time the conventional rules of the keto diet as we know it, she is still keto because she is in ketosis. So you can't say that somebody's not keto if they're actually in ketosis, right?
Yeah.
So you're still definitely keto. She's still an awesome keto coach. I want to ask you about parenting and how your daughter eats and how your husband eats. When you first started keto, did you immediately try to make changes for them as well to try to influence changes for them? What does it look like with your daughter going to school? Tell us a little bit about your husband and your daughter and how they eat with you.
So my husband and daughter eat the same as me. I'm the cook here at home. I make all the food. Sometimes when I'm lucky, my husband makes a meal. But he works a lot, so at home he sometimes prepares his own dinner. But most of the time I cook for me and my daughter. And we eat a mostly ketogenic diet for a very long time. In the beginning, when she was a baby, we were like lower on carbs. But then when she was like a toddler, we started with the ketogenic diet, and so we cut out the bread and all the things. Like she didn't have the conventional milk at night, and we gave her like some almond milk, and we added in some omega-3 fish oil. But yeah, it's hard to live in the society when you want to live in a ketogenic lifestyle, and also involve your children. Because now in school, I just told her that she's allergic to gluten. I I made a little lie because they were giving like a lot of cookies and bread, and now we just give her the cookies and say like these are her cookies, which are gluten free. They're still kind of processed, but they're really clean ingredients. I shared about it last week, I think, in my story. And she has these cookies. It's from a brand called Good Brand. It's a brand here in Belgium. And they're mainly made from like some natural sugar, no flour, some potato starch. So all natural ingredients, no glucose syrup, no high fructose corn syrup or anything like that. And she likes it. She likes to eat in this way. Sometimes it's hard with the vegetables, but I just get some vegetable juice that I make myself at home. So she gets the vegetables in, but she's a meat eater. She loves to eat meat. She's like the chicken drumsticks, even steak. She loves it. She's more like carnivore. If I let her choose what she wants to eat, she just eats like sweets and meats. Like she would eat a steak with a little bit of grapes, and that's what she likes to eat. And my husband, he's like kind of diehard keto. He really loves the ketogenic diet. He would at night eat just like a steak with some salad. That's what he mainly eats at night. And then for lunch, we have the leftovers that I made for dinner at night for me and my daughter. So that's kind of how we manage the ketogenic diet in our family.
Okay. So, what advice would you give to a mom who maybe doesn't have the same support from the spouse that you did, but you want to change your child's diet, but you're meeting some resistance either from your spouse or mother-in-law, other well-meaning people are just like, I don't know if you should do that. That sounds dangerous, whatever. Like, and now you're a little bit insecure or you're scared of making waves. So what advice would you give to somebody?
Yeah, it's really hard these days. Apparently, when you eat a steak, it's even more unhealthy than when you eat a processed food that is full with sugar. But I would just have a conversation with them and say, like, this is how I raise my child. I just explain them about the ketogenic diet and how it works. So they have like a kind of understanding of why I'm doing this. It's not just like, I'm doing this, you deal with it. Or I'm not gonna go and be like a violent, like, just leave me alone. This is what I'm doing. I just explain them what it is, and yeah, they can either they can agree or not. And then when I have to deal with my husband, I am very lucky that he's on the same side. But when you don't have that support, it can be really hard. Then I would say like find your community, or like when you have a coach, that's also a great way to start. So you have someone to turn to when you have like a hard time. Just like one text away and you get motivated again. And then, yeah, mainly like find ways that you can kind of make your husband or your spouse eat keto without him knowing. Um, like I explained this to my dad's girlfriend, and now my dad is eating like ketogenic diet sometimes just because she's making ketogenic dinners and he doesn't even realize it's keto. So that's also a way to handle that. But yeah, when you're in a family and your spouse is not supportive, it can be hard, but it's not impossible. You just need to sit down, have a conversation, and say like, okay, this is what I want. Where can we meet middle ground? What are you willing to change? And how can I adapt to that? And yeah, sometimes you need to just have a hard conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll share as well. My husband does not eat keto. My daughter does not eat keto in the sense that she's probably not in ketosis, but we do try to stick with whole foods with her as much as possible. Um, and sometimes it's usually not when it's just a normal day. My husband is fine with the normal day-to-day things, but like when we go see Nana and Papa or when we're on vacation and, he wants to give her a sugary treat. I usually try to give a little bit of pushback. I'm like, I really don't want to do that. And what would happen is he would be like, oh, come on, let her live a little, whatever it might be, like, let her enjoy life. Not everybody has
Yeah.
to do things the way that you do. And so I would say, okay, let's run an experiment and pay attention to her behavior. And that is what has convinced him the most is
Yeah.
actually, I just would allow it. And I would say, okay, on the condition that we both pay attention to how this actually affects her. Because every time we let her have a lot of sugar, she just doesn't listen as well. She gets really grumpy. she
Yeah.
doesn't, she doesn't want to go to sleep, like you can see a marked difference in it. And honestly, that had convinced him way more than me trying to send him any kind of articles about it. He would just roll his eyes, like if I
Yeah.
would be like, let me show you some research, blah, 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 blah. But, it's very personal. It's very customized. And one thing that's most likely for sure is that your partner is on the same page with you in terms of loving your child above all else. And so it can be a really valuable thing to sometimes, back down a little bit and just allow the experiment to happen and let the evidence prove itself.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes I'm the one that says like, come on, let her have it because you want to see your child happy.
Yeah.
And sometimes we go to like an amusement park and they sell some ice creams with her favorite character on it.
Yeah.
And you kind of know as a parent, okay, I don't want to really do this, but then you see your child lighting up and then it's like, am I really going to deprive her from that? And
Right.
then we just say, okay, she can have one treat, but then the rest of the day we're just keeping it keto. Are we keeping it healthy, whole foods? And we're not gonna let this ruin our day. Like
Yeah.
you can control the damage.
Yeah.
It would be another thing to say like we're going to the amusement park and you can eat whatever you want, the ice cream, the candy canes, and all the sweets.
Yeah.
So when you're out with your spouse and you don't want to deprive your child from the social environment that they're growing up in, I would allow her to have like one ice cream that is maybe unhealthy. It's not going to cause as much damage as because most of the time she's eating a healthy, balanced diet.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally on the same page. We went to Disney recently and we were on vacation and we did the same thing. We both agreed just like one treat per day. The rest of the time we're sticking to fruits and vegetables and protein. But a couple of months back, we took our very first trip by ourselves on a vacation since my daughter had been born, and we left my daughter with Nana and Papa for almost a week. And so that had to be a conversation where I had to be on the same page with my husband, like, okay, even though she's not going to be quote unquote our problem, right? I still very much care about how she's going to
Yeah.
feel every single day. So we can't just tell Nana and Papa it's okay for her to eat whatever you guys want to give her all day, because they would just spoil her and like let her drink soda and just everything. So, we had done enough experiments and I had the social proof with my husband that he was like, okay, you're right. I'm going to have a conversation with my parents and say, this is how we want her to eat baseline, one treat per day. And they respected that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And most of the time, it's just like the ketogenic diet is simple, but the dealing with the people around you is what makes it hard.
Yeah.
If you're really supported and you can support each other, it's going a lot easier than when you're on your own. That's why a keto coach is really helpful, or a friend in your tribe or your community. Um, so if you're in that situation where you're a parent and you want to have your child healthy, it's finding a support group or someone that is like-minded. Because if you're constantly battling against someone that is not agreeing with how you raise your child, it can be hard and it's easier for you to give up.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So just because you feel like you don't have the support of the person that you wish you had support from, you can still find support in your life through a coach, through a Facebook community, through listening to podcasts, things like that. So support is out there. And speaking of support, Evie, so you're a keto coach, and I would love for people to know how to find you, how to work with you. So tell us a little bit about where people can connect with you.
Yeah, so you can find me on www.theketobabe.com, and there you can find all the information on my keto, the pricing, how I work, and even some ketogenic recipes you can find there if you want to have a head start. And I work one-on-one with clients, mainly through the internet. I have clients all over the world, and you can just contact me through my contact form, and I just reply to you, and then we start our first session.
Yeah, awesome. So everybody make sure that you follow Kitty. Follow Evie. She's the.healthy.parent. And you also have a Facebook page, right?
I have two Facebook pages. I have it's the Keto Babe, and I have the Healthy Parent.
Okay, awesome. So you guys can look that up as well. So I'm just going to recap before we wrap up for today. So on the topic of how to reintroduce healthy carbs on keto. So you want to make sure, first of all, that you are not insulin resistant. So you want to actually give the traditional keto diet a good fair shake, get yourself keto adapted, go, a few weeks to a few months, depending upon how overweight you are. And you can then, if you want to, start reintroducing carbs in a healthy way by focusing on whole foods, first of all. Being mindful of the portion sizes, because as Evie told us, the dose makes the poison. So it's not necessarily that it's carbs in general, it's how much carbs you just flooded into your system. So no naked carbs. So don't just eat carbs by themselves. Don't just eat a banana by itself. Have half a banana with some bacon and eggs, because you're going to buffer your blood sugar response by pairing your carbs with protein and with fat. Make sure that you actually test your blood sugar. So we're recommending to people that you can take this information into your own hands by getting a blood glucose meter. We talked about the Keto Mojo that you can buy through their website. You can also buy it on Amazon, and I'm sure there's other blood glucose meters out there that you can do your research online. There's also the option of doing a continuous glucose monitor or a CGM, and then you can just stick that in your arm once and go for 2 weeks and see how everything is affecting it. It syncs with your phone. It's very cool. Pay attention to how you physically feel after you're consuming certain foods, because you might have an individual intolerance to that certain food that other people don't. So sometimes Evie and her husband can eat the same thing, and then he winds up puking later and she's fine, right? So pay attention to how you physically feel. Are you feeling bloated? Are you feeling tired? Are you feeling, any kind of allergic reaction? So pay attention to how you physically feel, and then also pay attention to how you mentally feel. So if you're feeling a loss of control or cravings, or your thoughts are feeling a little bit disordered, just pay attention to that as well. And so these are ways of taking all this into consideration, that it's totally possible to reintroduce carbs in a healthy way on keto. And Evie is living proof of it, because remember, keto is not a certain food or not. It's not a list of approved foods. It's a metabolic state. And you can actually, that's the cool thing about keto that I really love, is that you can actually get that exact data feedback by testing your blood sugar and testing your ketones.
Yeah,
Evie,
exactly.
is there anything else that we missed that you want to leave us with today?
No, I think you covered it really well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you can go get a good night's sleep and rest your voice.
Thank you so
And you
much for
guys,
inviting me.
absolutely. And if you guys have any questions about this afterwards, feel free to reach out to either me or Evie on here on Instagram. I'm at the Keto Fit. And then Evie is the.healthy.parent. And we would be totally happy to answer any follow-up questions that you might have. All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Take care. Have a great week, Evie.
Bye bye.
Bye.